Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. On your screen is a headline from Bloomberg from 5 years ago, just about November 13th, 2018. Ripple is aiming to overtake Swift banking network, CEO says. But is that still the case? Well, perhaps not so much. There's a video that's been circulating. In fact, my fellow XRP YouTuber Crypto Eddie shared it on X, formerly known as Twitter, in which a Ripple executive speaking at a conference states effectively that actually Ripple's not so much competing with Swift anymore. And I thought that was interesting, especially in light of recent headlines, such as this one, for example. From Crypto Potato, Swift announces successful tokenization experiment using Chainlink's CCIP. And CoinDesk was covering this too. Swift Chainlink tokenization experiment successfully transfers value across multiple blockchains. And that resulted in a story covered here by the Crypto Basic. Ripple critic says Chainlink becomes XRP top rival after partnering with Swift. Oh no! Is XRP in trouble now? Is this another XRP killer? I've heard that so many times for over half a decade. I gotta talk about this. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, and shout out and credit to Crypto Eddie for sharing this clip with a Ripple employee. And she wrote the following on X. #XRP community. Here's a great example of how Ripple's business model focused and changed from 2016 to 2017. Ripple's Ross Edwards a month ago explained how Ripple, in truth, doesn't compete with Swift because they focus on low capital transfer use cases. And I don't feel it necessary to play the clip. It's almost 2 minutes long. That is the key takeaway, and he states that. And it's not that there's no overlap, there's no competition between Ripple and Swift, but there's so little that they might as well not be competing at all, at least as it stands today. Now, that's not to say that potentially Ripple couldn't get more into what they originally focused back in 2016 in terms of just replacing Swift or largely taking their market share effectively. But they are going for, instead, where they can get people, the low-hanging fruit. That's actually probably the best way to word it, actually. They're going for the low-hanging fruit. So Ripple has, at this point, they've been at this so long, yes, they've really honed in on what their ideal potential customer looks like. And they're remittance firms, largely, because they're easier to onboard. Banks, more conservative, harder to get. They certainly don't want larger financial institutions because they have the least incentive to change for a number of reasons I've been articulating for years, especially the very largest that have no Servocio accounts and make money from their smaller competitors. But if you're talking about forward-leaning remittance firms, yes, of course they're jumping on board utilizing XRP via on-demand liquidity because it reduces costs to such an extent that you can actually now have lower-cost transactions that weren't financially viable actually take place. And so it's kind of like they're creating their own little niche. They're creating demand from customers that didn't previously exist because there wasn't the technological ability wasn't there. So you're talking about high velocity transactions at very low costs, and there just wasn't any money in that before, and now there is. And so that's why I'm saying for Ripple, that's basically low hanging fruit because that wasn't even possible before. It's an easier sell than trying to get like Citibank, for example, which Ripple realized a long time ago was certainly not their best target. So it doesn't mean that once they've not literally exhausted, but once they've really got a substantial number of these entities on board, who knows what it'll look like another 5 or 10 years for Ripple, and over that time maybe they'll increasingly start targeting other types of firms, increase their sales force, and maybe they do start to go after some of those mid-sized firms, or even just if they want to go after specifically smaller size banks, whatever they figure out what makes most sense for them. It's just interesting, and this is the reason I want to highlight this, that this is not the narrative that we're used to, and I actually hadn't seen this articulated by anyone at Ripple, though it's also true that it had been years since I had heard anything from anyone at Ripple talking about taking over Swift. Yeah, I heard that like half a decade ago, but that's probably about the last time you heard anybody from Ripple say that, but this narrative has still been alive and discussed frequently within the XRP community, so it's interesting that we can now highlight this and we can maybe shift that a little bit and recognize that although they're still competing with Swift, and maybe that'll pick up in the future, they're actually doing something a little bit different. And so in terms of other firms partnering up with Swift, is this actually some sort of negative? Well, no. Long story short, no, we're not in like a XRP killer situation here. And then anybody that thinks that, the only use case XRP has is as a bridge currency, that's silly. There are all sorts of developers building on top of the XRP ledger, utilizing XRP for all sorts of use cases. No, the XRP is fine. But let's go through this anyway. From the Crypto Basic, here's the headline. Ripple critic says Chainlink becomes XRP top rival after partnering with Swift. And folks, that is not true. Like, that is not the case. So, piece reads as follows. Prominent XRP critic Dan the Man says Chainlink is now XRP's topmost rival after Swift partnership. In a recent tweet, a prominent XRP and Ripple critic argued that Chainlink had become XRP's topmost rival. The critic was ex-user Dan the Man. Dan expressed this sentiment amid Chainlink's recent partnership with Swift. The critic argued the Swift-Chainlink collaboration was one Ripple failed to attain. In his words, quote, Chainlink is now the one competitor to XRP as it forged partnerships with Swift that Ripple failed to establish, end quote. Okay, so a couple of things here. First of all, the next post that I'm going to share with you, Dan the Man deleted for some reason. Maybe he no longer believes what he said. Maybe. I don't know why. I don't know why he got rid of it. But it is on your screen right there. And then second here, Ripple failed to establish... Ripple, they're doing different things, folks. Like, what is being done with Chainlink from a technological perspective? Yeah, Swift's trying to get a piece of that because they finally recognize that blockchain is here to stay and they want to help with interoperability, but not in terms of positioning the Chainlink itself, the cryptocurrency, as a bridge for anything. It's a completely unrelated use case. It is not the same thing. It's absolutely not the case. It's not even in Ripple's wheelhouse to be doing that. That is not what they're doing. They're trying to evolve what they called, Ripple is, the Internet of Value, moving value around the planet as quick as you can move information around the planet today via text or email, whatever it may be. They want value, money to actually be able to move around. Like, that's what they're going for here. But if you look at the Swift connection, which I'll show you in just a second, that is not what they're going for. Yet here is what Dan the Man posted on X, and this is the one that's now been deleted. He wrote, Chainlink is now the #1 competitor to XRP as it forged partnerships with Swift that Ripple failed to establish. Okay, so again, I want to be clear, that assumes that XRP, that's the primary use case for XRP, and I'm not even convinced that that's the case. It is yet to be seen because, and I'll tell you this, frankly, if you look at market action, I am not convinced that speculators of XRP would agree that Ripple's the most important because XRP just follows Bitcoin. So to me, it's just my thinking has evolved to some degree over the years, but it's not that different from when I first jumped into crypto in many ways. It's that there's an entire thriving ecosystem, XRP ecosystem, and Ripple's a part of that. I want them to do well because that's anything that's good for the adoption of XRP, that should be good for XRP holders, right? And if Ripple's a part of that, then great. But in terms of a #1 competitor specifically for XRP, that pretends like there's no other use cases out there. And then this guy wrote, meanwhile, Ripple has dropped from its markets report the ODL volume. Okay, so that seems disingenuous to me because although technically accurate, if you look at the most recent market report, this was published a couple weeks after the SEC v. Ripple lawsuit. Judge Torres came out with her decision on the motions for summary judgment. So here's the Q2 2023 XRP markets report. And this one's markedly different from anything they put out in an XRP markets report, but there's a reason for this, and they were pretty upfront about it. So check this part. This is the relevant portion. They wrote the following, July 31st. In this report, Ripple will focus on the July 13th, 2023 landmark court decision in Securities and Exchange Commission v. Ripple Labs, Inc. that definitively declared that XRP is not a security. This report will debunk several misconceptions we've seen out there about that decision. We will also share certain metrics regarding Ripple's XRP holdings from the past quarter. While published in a good faith effort at transparency, These quarterly reports have been weaponized against the company by the SEC. Ironic for an agency that touts transparency and disclosure. Accordingly, Ripple is reevaluating the role and contents of this report going forward and will have updates on that front in Q3 2023. Rest assured, however, our original intent remains to be transparent and raise the bar on transparency for the crypto industry as a whole. So there you go. I want to make sure that you knew it straight from the horse's mouth here. So when Dan the Man says, meanwhile, Ripple has dropped from its markets report the ODL volume, that's without sufficient context. So you might look at that on the surface, and it's almost like as a narrative attempted to be driven here. And I don't know, because I looked at the guy's profile, and he also pushes a bunch of positive stuff. Like he reposts a bunch of positive stuff about XRP. So I don't know. Either way, it just makes me wonder why that in particular would be written that way, because like a more useful way to write that, if that's a part of the idea you wanted to share, was yes, include that information about the information that's currently not in that quarterly report, and then cite Ripple publicly stated they're revamping this and we're going to have more information on that next quarter. But if you want to drive a narrative that Ripple is seeking to be less transparent, then you'd omit that information, wouldn't you? But Ripple saying no, hey, XRP just got legal clarity. From a legal perspective, things changed. Internally, we're reevaluating this. We'll have more for you next quarter. Isn't that more reasonable? I think the answer is yes. And then specifically, as far as the whole Chainlink situation here, let's talk a little bit about that. So from Crypto Potato, Swift announces successful tokenization experiment using Chainlink CCIP. And really just need to cover the top part here. Global financial messaging network Swift announced successfully facilitating a variety of blockchain interoperability tests with multiple financial institutions like Citi, Sixth Digital Exchange, BNP Paribas, and BNY Mellon. For this purpose, Swift tapped the Web3 services platform Chainlink's cross-chain interoperability protocol. And they got 3 bullet points. Number 1, the company said the experiments are part of its wider strategy to ensure secure global interoperability as new technologies and platforms surface. They build on work over the past few years to show how Swift's infrastructure could support the financial community in interconnecting central bank digital currencies and other digital assets with new and existing payment systems. Bullet point 2. The development comes after Chainlink and Swift announced that they would be collaborating with numerous financial institutions to assess the feasibility of integrating with diverse blockchain networks in June. And number 3, Swift's Chief Innovation Officer, Tom Zach, I don't know how to pronounce that, commented on the latest development. Okay, so right off the bat here, just wanted to point out that Ripple stated that they're really not competing with Swift today. So if this is the XRP killer, and if Ripple's really failed here, how come they don't give a damn and they're not even seeking to go after this business? Specifically what Swift is doing. But an even bigger point here, in terms of interoperability, it's nothing but vague. It's nothing but cloudiness. And you see this in the reports all the time, and it grinds my gears, folks. Really steams my vegetables. Because you don't know, like they go out of their way to not show you how the sausage is made, or their vague statements. What does that actually mean? Interoperability, central bank digital currencies, in what way? How are they being connected? And they don't tell you any of that actual information. So, given that we don't have that information, why would you think that that is anything that would harm XRP specifically, even with this particular use case with XRP as a bridge currency? Because I will tell you that my suspicion, based on the way that they worded it, even though I don't know exactly what they're doing to cause this interoperability specifically, because from what I've seen in all the reports, they haven't provided sufficient detail, just that they state they've done it. What I'm not seeing is, a cryptocurrency, Chainlink or anything else, being positioned as a bridge currency to convert from one fiat currency to another. I'm not seeing that. Are you seeing that? It isn't even the same thing anyway. They're doing something else. That's what it looks like anyway. So it's a bunch of nonsense, and that's why I just want to kind of smack that down, because it doesn't make sense here. So it's fascinating, Ripple's, the way that they've just kind of shifted and evolved over time, but XRP is still fulfilling that role as a bridge currency, and I think increasingly so. And certainly as we strive ever closer to that, very tokenized world, which is an inevitability, you're not going to have trading pairs for everything that could possibly exist all on one platform the world over, because that's what it would take to not need XRP as a bridge currency. You're not going to have that ever. There are tons of different places where assets are traded. You're always going to need something to bridge these things. Liquidity matters specifically for XRP, and it's got it in spades. And and that's something you can't program into it. It's technologically sufficient. So in terms of that, I think that there's going to be nothing but an increase in demand for XRP specifically for this particular use case. But again, that's not the only use case. Yes, I'm talking about that in this video because it's an interesting topic and an interesting shift from messaging from somebody higher up at Ripple. But none of this is bad news. I'm glad I have this channel so I can straighten this crap out, because I'll tell you, that was one of the driving factors for me to want to start the channel. It was one of them. I mean, obviously, I also just love talking about this stuff because I'm so interested anyway, but there's so many nonsense narratives, especially back then, man, 2018, 2019, whew. The Bitcoin maxi narratives about XRP is bad. So I'll always enjoy pushing back against that stuff when people are saying stuff that just doesn't make sense. And some people, they're just wrong. Some people, they're intentionally trying to mislead you. But whatever the intent is, I'll clean it up. Don't worry about it. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.